When I think of healthcare, the age that I'm at now, if I was to live another, you know, three decades, and I've got health issues, could I tolerate a couple more decades of this kind of healthcare? There are people, chronically ill people, that are like I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. The medical PTSD and just you know, the insincerity and the, you know, all medical providers are not the same, right? But there are a few really, really fantastic people out there, and they have no idea. Also, here's the thing: they have no idea. The people who are out there, really sincere, remarkable doctors, really lovely human beings, and really respectful, decent human beings, and really doing the best that they can every day in their job. These people have no idea how the other people are treating patients. They have no idea. And I've told this. I've said this to many doctors, uh, to a lot of doctors online, but also to some in person. I wish there was a space that we could come to, a table that we all could come to and talk. There should be a space where all doctors should hear how other and I'm not necessarily talking about naming names. It's not about getting people into trouble. It's not about, there should be a space where everyone can come to, all the doctors can come to, and they hear how their colleagues are mistreating people. They Here's the thing, in healthcare, they never hear the degree that they're misdiagnosing people. They never hear about it. You know how many times I've been misdiagnosed and that is still in my records and it remains that way? Someone else was telling me this the other day, on social media, on one of my posts. Um, yeah, when they misdiagnose you, it stays in your records forever. They don't want to. They don't want it to be known that you were misdiagnosed, so that all the misdiagnosis stays in your records. There needs to be a space where we can all these doctors can come together, and they can hear how their colleagues are mistreating people, because I've seen doctors shocked at what was done to me. But you know what? 99% of the doctors out there, they don't know what's going on in their own community. They don't know how people are being mistreated, turned away, refused care, misdiagnosed. Even worse, I've had one doctor say something horrific about my daughter when my daughter was in high school. Something just filthy. There's stuff that patients could tell other doctors, and doctors wouldn't believe it until they got to know us and until they heard more of our story, and then they realized, yeah, we're telling the truth. But there never is a space, or there's never a gathering place where these doctors can hear what's going on in their own community. When people hear my story, when good doctors hear my story, they're shocked at how I have been failed and misdiagnosed and how I've been treated. But the problem is, you have to, most doctors don't believe what was all done to me, how I was over medicated, how I was misdiagnosed. And the problem is, you have to convince them. And once they get to hear information, once they believe me. And when these doctors become more enlightened and learn more and more what's really going on out here, how people are really being failed, it's a whole awakening process for them too. I've seen a couple doctors, their process of waking up, and they're just like we are when we realize more and more how we're being failed, you know? I have something going on right now. I have a doctor who we're doing something, and I can just see this going sideways, it not in my favor. And it's going to be disastrous. I don't know if I should even bother trying to explain it. Here's the thing. In my case, when doctors have failed you, when doctors have collectively misdiagnosed you, when you've been injured from various doctors, other doctors will ask you, well, who did that? You know what? They want to hear that someone in our medical community who's got a crappy reputation has done that. They want to hear that, it's someone who, maybe isn't well liked, or someone who's not the best doctor. They hope that, oh, it's that one person. But when it's when well-respected doctors, well-known doctors that they all know and respect, doctors that they've worked with in the community for years, when well-respected doctors have failed you, then it's a bad thing for you. One doctor that, really failed me and harmed me. And another doctor said, well, who? And they said, well, that's a friend of mine, They wanted to hear, oh, it's some crappy rogue, someone that's off the rails, someone who's not well respected. When they hear that it's someone who's highly regarded, then then it's a bad thing for you. But the problem is, there good people can make mistakes, can make terrible mistakes, but they don't want to understand that. So they feel a duty they can feel a duty not to be on your side, even though they know it's true. They don't want to betray somebody who they respect, because they know that it could be them that fails you next. But, we're talking about human beings. Human beings can make mistakes. So let's recognize that rather than, you know, the thing is, you can become the enemy of the system because you've been failed. Not because you're a bad person. Failed people become scapegoats because failed patients become scapegoats when they've been failed by well-respected people. And when that happens to you, you're screwed. When they don't want to acknowledge it, when they're angry, when they're embarrassed, then you're up against a resistant system who wants to label you the problem because people that they like have failed you. And that's the situation that I'm in a lot of the time. Damn, it's so unfortunate because there really should be somebody to help patients navigate that kind of situation where you become the scapegoat. And when you're uneducated, when you're on medications, when you're, not all there, when you're drugged up, when you're really sick, when you're out of the loop, when you can't properly advocate yourself, when that cycle gets going and you become the scapegoat, and there's all sorts of negative comments in your medical records that they can see and you can't see, or your record has been flagged that you're a problem. You're on a merry-go-round that isn't going to end. You're really backed into a corner. Yeah, that's sad and a tough thing when and literally what they expect you to do, what the system can tell you to do. They expect you to travel for healthcare when they do that to you. They expect you to leave the area and go move to another they expect you to move or to travel to another city or another province or another, well, maybe not another country, but if you need surgery that they don't perform here. And for patients, there's not necessarily a safe place to discuss these things because, there's often people who work in the system in the spaces where patients are online who will try to tell you otherwise,